So before we start, just a little quick disclaimer. I do swear twice in this episode. Yeah, I know all my friends are like, "What? You're swearing?" But yes, I do swear twice, and just be ready for that. Hi guys, welcome back. I'm so excited for this week's episode. Today wasn't the best day, but hopefully just talking to you guys will make it better. So before we get into that though, I just had a few things to share. First off, I just want to let you know that every season we have a different quote unquote thing of the week, as I call it. So this season, as you could probably guess, we have a quote every episode. I will be posting it on Instagram as well if you have any thoughts or commentaries on the quote. Second, I have a to-do list and a monthly overview that you can download for free on my website, and a bunch of other resources are going to be made available in the next few months as well. Now, with those two announcements said, let's get into today's episode. This week's quote is, "While most of the technology we are senselessly addicted to promises us greater connectedness, people are more isolated, disconnected, and lonely than ever before in history," by Brian H. McGill. This quote, it's pretty sad, but I feel like it's accurate on some lengths. The following extract is from the website uswitch.com, which I will link below. I highly advise you to check it out. It talks about the history of mobile phones, when it was invented, apps, and emojis. Also, if I get any information wrong, just email me at theeverythingteenpodcast@gmail.com. So, mobile phones were invented as early as the 1940s when engineers working at AT&T developed cells for mobile phone base stations. The very first mobile phones were not really mobile phones at all. They were two-way radios that allowed people like taxi drivers and the emergency services to communicate. Motorola, on 3rd of April 1973, were the first company to mass produce the first handheld mobile phone. So, I know this kind of sounds stupid, but it's important to acknowledge that there was a time when people didn't have these smartphones that we depend on so much these days, and that we've become hooked to. And still to these days, some people, well, very few, don't crave it and don't have it and are perfectly happy, if not even more than us. There used to be a time where people didn't have up-to-date maps that they could rely on, effective ways of communication, and so on. Something really interesting that I've been thinking a lot about is, how our generation has so many useless gadgets and apps because the country we live in has come to the point where we are advanced enough to not need to come up with life-changing things 24/7. Or at least not as much as hundreds of years ago, where all we could do was focus on whether we have clean water or finding medicine for our father and having enough food on the table, etc. Don't get me wrong, it still happens a lot, and I do think that we should bring a lot of effort into helping other people. But now that we have countries that are so developed and families that are at ease, many large companies have now shifted their focus on trying to entertain these people. They know that they can make huge profits because a lot of people were getting bored and they weren't thinking about their survival anymore. Then this turned into a problem where we've created whole populations into zombies controlled by these huge companies, and they don't even know they're being manipulated. So maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but this is kind of, really looking in the bigger picture. It kind of looks like this. And cell phones are one of these big products that we're using for some things that can become damaging to us. Now, the latest iPhone 12, wait, is it 12? I don't I don't know what they're at, like 57 or something. The latest iPhone 12's purposes are not just communicating, but making us addicted. And it's working. If you're a teen listening to this, technology was going through a drastic change around the time you were born. So we were supposed to do it right from the get go, which made us more prone to developing an addiction since we've never known a time when it wasn't present, reinforcing the idea that it was vital in order to connect and be happy. It is like so hard to stay away from the internet, especially with so many things connected to it: homework, up to date news, even a 9 to 5 job. My goal in this episode is not to make you feel ashamed of your screen time. It is to, acknowledge that it can be addictive, get educated about what happens to your brain, and finish this episode with loads of advice and tips packed under your belt. because it has been extremely difficult for me as well. Shit. So by the end of the summer, I just was feeling so sick of it and, mentally exhausted. Sometimes I would feel so good. There's like when someone liked or shared my post, and it was just this burst of happiness. And then, but it faded so quickly. My self esteem was very low, and TikTok kind of changed the way I perceived the world in a bad way. It was very toxic. But I do think that it's not the case for everybody. I think it can be a very good app for some people, and where they learn a lot and get to communicate with more friends, their friends. It was just that for me it was a very bad app. So one day I just decided to uninstall it. The only thing that I needed to do was press the logo on my phone, and drag it to the little bin on the top of my screen. That was it. 5 seconds, maybe, probably less. That was maybe one of the best things I've ever done for myself. It allowed me to think more and to be curious and develop new ideas and a strong imagination. But how did I not uninstall it sooner? Why was a 5-second movement so hard to make? Thinking about it for a long time, I came up with three answers. One, I was scared of missing out. Two, it was a place where I could get validation quickly without much effort. And three, I learned so much on that platform. Now, think of these three things and how you can still experience them in the real world. I feel like a lot of us are worried about not getting to enjoy all three things mentioned above once we were disconnected to these platforms. But truth is, the people that created these apps took their inspiration from the world and tricked us into thinking that social media was a better way of experiencing them. Now, I want to talk about how to recognize if you have an unhealthy relationship with your device, maybe your phone, computer, or even iPad. Then I'll talk about tips to limit that screen time or even get rid of that addiction, even if it's a minor one. This part will be separated in two. First, I'll talk about gaming addiction and then social media addiction. First, I just want to say that addiction is a strong word, and it could be anything really. So everything I'm saying doesn't have to apply to someone with a severe addiction. These tips can help you no matter your state. And again, my goal is not to make you guys feel ashamed or bad. This is completely normal, and a large percentage of the American population feels a need to stay connected to their phone or gaming console. Now, to get on with the episode. I think that it's usually very clear if you have an addiction to your device, but here are a few questions to ask yourself to kind of get an idea of where you place yourself on this large spectrum. To help you answer every question with a number from a scale from 1 to 5. 1 being I never feel this, and 5 being this happens to me on a daily basis. Remember, this does not apply to doing homework, being in a Zoom meeting, or doing other important work. So, 1. Do you hide how much time you spend online with your friends and family? Do you feel ashamed of how much time you spent on a specific platform? 2. Do you spend more time on a platform than you apprehended? Do you feel like you do not have any control over it? 3. Do you find yourself checking your device obsessively, even if you do not get any notifications? Do you ever think that you heard a notification bell or seen a blinking light on your phone when there actually wasn't one? 4. Do you find yourself checking or playing on your device at inappropriate times? Do you ever sneak a look at it at the wrong moments? 5. Do your eyes feel strained? Do you feel tired during the day? And remember that this last one could also be from something else. It's not necessarily your screen time usage that are going to cause this. So I think you'll really know whether or not it's from your device. So those were the 5 questions. There's a billion more that I could have asked, but I'm going to keep it at that. These could have helped or not at all, and that's okay too. You can find a bunch of questions and quizzes like these online if you're interested. Personally, I feel like it's important to ask yourself a few questions, but those quiz results shouldn't define quote unquote your percentage of addiction, but they can give you a good idea of where you're at. I think that you should decide yourself if you should improve your state or not. It's totally fine if you decide to still spend the same amount of time on your device, but if you feel like shit every time you get off your phone, then maybe you should make an effort to feel better. Okay, so now I want to give you a bunch of tips to reduce your screen time and that personally have helped me. So here are 10 tips. 1. At school, if you have a lot of online assignments that might mean 5 hours at the computer at that night, ask your teachers if you can do it on paper or if they can print you a paper copy of that assignment. Don't be afraid to ask and explain why. 2. When you're about to work on the computer, ask yourself what you're going to do exactly and what you can do off the screen. For example, if I have to research a definition for an assignment I'm writing, grab a dictionary instead. Also, don't just keep your to-do list in your head. Write it down. It'll really help. You can listen to my first episode of the season to learn all about to-do lists. No self-promoting here, guys. 3. When working, throw any devices you don't need out of your room. Don't literally throw them out. Just, you know what I mean. If you're working on your phone, turn off notifications and maybe install those apps that restrict access to some apps or whatever. A lot of people have gotten tremendous help from these. I'll link a few of them in the description box below. 4. Try to avoid having any devices in your room while sleeping. If your alarm clock is on your phone, consider purchasing an alarm clock. 5. This next one is really important. If your parents are in the house while you're working or whatever, tell them to check up on you every once in a while to make sure you're not getting distracted by God knows what on your phone. Another way is to work in the living room or a room that your family spends the most time in. Like that, you're less likely to get distracted because your parents will be aware of what you're doing. But number 5 is really optional because not everyone is comfortable working in a place with a lot of people. And sometimes I do need to stay in my room, to really concentrate well. 6. Set timers. Just, set them. They may not always work, but the times where they actually do, you'll be grateful. I feel like sometimes, I'll be scrolling or whatever and I'll be looking on the internet and I'll spend way more time than I apprehended to, even if I put a timer. So it's really normal and don't worry. But there will come a time where you'll have enough self-discipline to say, I'm getting off now. 7. Try to set a lot of things to do with your family and friends over the weekend, like going to the park or a restaurant. Like that, because it's set, you're less likely to bail out and hide yourself in your room and play video games or whatever. And once you're at that place, you'll be glad you came and you'll realize that you can have fun without all your screens. Obviously, don't book your weekend to the max if you have homework or other important things to do. 8. If you can, have an actual planner instead of Google Calendar. This is really optional because Google Calendar is awesome, but if you're comfortable with your own handwriting, you should definitely think of buying a planner. 9. Listen to podcasts instead of watching TV. Podcasts are really great because you can do so much at the same time. Go on a jog, do your homework, knit, and a bunch of other things without having to move your attention or your eyes to another point. And sometimes I feel like some podcasts are really more entertaining than TV. Sometimes if they're good enough. I know mine is very straightforward, but you can find a bunch of podcasts that are just so fun. 10. You can go look at my Instagram page for a post titled 20 Things to Do Instead of Scrolling for a bunch of ideas of creative things to do. These are things that I would personally do, so hopefully you'll find a few things that you're interested in on a day you're really bored. Now, here are 3 tips for lowering your social media screen time. 1. Set yourself a time of the day to go on it and a time limit. 2. If you're a business or podcast with an account, make a to-do list before logging into your social media account. And 3. Don't be worried about taking breaks. They're really important and you'll feel refreshed and have plenty of ideas once you're back online. And now, here are 3 tips to lower your video game time. 1. Try having more games on your Xbox than your phone. Turning on your Xbox and gaming console, signing in, and waiting for the server to download takes way longer than just opening your phone and tapping on an app. Trust me, I know this from experience. This way, you'll play only when you really want to, thus spending less time playing. 2. Again, set timers and even what days of the week to play. And then 3, only play once you finish a specific task. For example, finishing my homework before playing. So that was it for the tips, guys. Sorry if I sound like a mom. Seems to happen to me a lot, but these were just some things that really helped me because I was going through something quite similar and I was very, very addicted. And not just TikTok. At one point, I got really into video games and I played this game and it was like you were renovating a house, but at the same time, you had to do do all these puzzles where you connect the three. I don't remember exactly, but anyways, that was so addicting and it was horrible. I would just stay there for hours just playing it. I mean, it was fun in the moment while it lasted, but then after, just kind of my whole day was ruined. So now I want to talk about, we're kind of the first generation to really get exposed to so much screen. And, in the science, I didn't really look into this, but I'll definitely link you some websites about the side effects biologically and biologically and what happens to your brain when you get so much exposure to screen. So I'm kind of interested in how is this going to affect us in the long run. I think it's not even going to be our mental health because, again, I told you guys that TikTok kind of shifted the way I perceived the world. In a way, it was kind of like a very because on TikTok and on other social media platforms, the way they post is so different from the way they are in real life. So it's very weird how you feel after you've gone off of it. And I just am really interesting to the knowing. I think in the long run, it's just going to change who we are as people. And I think we're just going to have to see what it does to us physically. And I'm kind of scared, but at the same time, every generation has its thing that it has to deal with. And ours is the technology, and we'll see what happens. And hopefully, if it goes badly and if we're very hardly hit by it, the people after us, they will know. And hopefully, they'll develop new ways to have healthier relationships with all of this exposure and to technology. That was just something I was thinking about. So, next week, I think we're going to be talking about confidence. And for all you middle-aged people listening to me, I think you're from my mom or whatever told you about it. I'm going to talk more about in the high school environment, so maybe it doesn't apply to you, but still stick by because maybe it'll be something interesting in there. So we'll really talk about confidence and being your own person and doing stuff for you versus for other people. We'll talk about peer pressure, all that good stuff, and again, give you some of my experiences with it. So stay tuned, and I hope to see you next week. It was really fun, and I feel much better also because I had a break in the middle and I ate shepherd's pie, which always boosts my mood. So next week I'll see you hopefully, and yeah, bye guys. Love you all.